Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey everybody, Mickey here with CarryTrainer, another episode of the Higher Line podcast. And I got my new friend, Matt Page here. You don't really recognize him. He is known by many people as Master Ken. I felt like that was like fitting. Is it weird? I ran into you at SHOT Show. You were in character.
Yeah, I saw you. Yeah, 4
beers in my hands that I was running to go.
That's right.
And I'm like, I know I'm not going to cross paths with him again, so I'm just going to walk up and just say, hey.
Yeah.
And you were like, look, and you're like, we'll do that thing next week, and like just kept moving. But you had your guys, and do that character. I know from time to time I've talked to people that are in acting, and they are so known by the character that people like never have any idea that you're somebody else.
Yeah, to the point where Joe and I joke about it a lot. Joe, who plays Todd Woodland, Ken's assistant.
He's the guy you always punch in the nuts. And
yeah, the guy who's always taken all the brunt of Master Ken's violence. He travels with me on quite a few of the appearances whenever he can. And there have been instances where I'm walking like this, and he's walking next to me. And of course, he looks the same on the show as he does in real life. And someone will walk up to us and hand me their camera and go, hey, can you take a picture of me and Todd? Where's Master Ken? And so I'm saying, I'm invisible to them without the whole transformation, which is kind of funny. And it's actually been an advantage at times, because when I would perform at, say, award shows and martial arts events, there's seminars during the day, and I have to make fun of these people at night at the banquet. So I can just sort of sit like this in the corner.
They have no idea.
Nobody recognizes me, and I'm just sitting here taking notes about the stuff I'm going to poke fun of them, and I can it's sort of like a Clark Kent kind of thing. I just got to put the glasses on, and nobody recognizes.
The funny thing is, like, I'm looking at you now. I see you, and I've got a pretty good eye for faces. But yeah, man, if I just saw you walking down the street, I wouldn't be like.
Yeah, it's so weird, and I greatly underestimated what a difference that would make. But it is sort of nice, honestly, to be able to transition back and forth. And SHOT Show really accentuated that, because we've never been to an event that had that kind of attendance. Mm-hmm. I mean, whatever it was, 60,000 people or however many people it was, and we couldn't walk 5 feet without taking a picture. Yeah. Saying hello to somebody who recognized the show. We love that. That's awesome.
And that's your genre there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. And then all I got to do is go and transform, and I can go wherever I need to. Nobody stops me. Nobody recognizes me. So it's sort of I can switch between the two worlds very easily so far.
You walk to dinner and you go.
Exactly.
Good to go. That's funny. So this podcast, it's, I don't know if you checked it out at all before you popped on here, but the Higher Line, the purpose of it is that we talk about things that mean more than just stupid humor with guys and mustaches. And that was a joke. That was me digging you now.
I got it. I've had worse.
For all the fun, I do some video stuff, not like you guys, but we record hundreds of hours a year on the range, and I know how much work it is. So people see your little 5-minute, and that came out condescending. They see one of these 5-minute clips, and they don't understand that it's probably hours of work that you write it, produce it, all that. Yeah. So, how did all this come about? What made you decide to create this character?
Well, I went to film school in New Mexico when I graduated, is trying to figure out the independent film thing. I was doing like the film festival thing, making short films and sending them off and getting, I'm sure I still have a bunch of rejection letters from Sundance, Telluride, and all the festivals that didn't want me, that were, when you read in magazines, it's like, oh, such and such took a short film to Sundance, and now they're a big director. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just do that. And we never got into the big festivals. And after a few years of doing that, I heard about web series and like YouTube shows. And I was like, well, what is this? And so I worked on a couple of other people's shows, and I was like, well, this is really interesting, because, say I finish a short film and it costs me $5,000 to make this film, which I was delivering pizza. I didn't have an extra $5,000. It was like all my money going into these films. And I thought, okay, so I got into 10 film festivals. I was able to attend 3 of them. And probably over the course of 2 years, maybe 1,500 people, if I'm lucky, saw my movie.
Right.
And then I see these YouTube things and I'm like, well, if I'm going to lose money at this anyway, I would at least like more people to see the work. So I thought, well, I'll try this YouTube thing. And so I tried uploading short films, and nobody cared about the short films, like, you know, all the stuff I did in film school. And we made independent short films. They never took off. And then got this idea to do a series in the spirit of like The Office, like the BBC version of The Office, Ricky Gervais. I became obsessed with that show. I just thought it was so brilliant. And so I thought, okay, well, I want to do that, but it should be a little different. So I'll put it in a martial arts school. And I wrote a pilot for it. And we shot a test video just to see if anybody liked it. And as soon as we uploaded it, we started getting, I think we got up to like 10,000 views in like 2 weeks. And that was far above anything I'd ever uploaded. And we started to immediately just build a following and build an audience. And martial artists were going, oh my God, I know people like this guy. I know people like his students. I've been to this dojo before. And it resonated with people in a way that nothing I had ever done connected. And it just sort of continued from there. It went from, we did 4 seasons of the show. We started doing other little snippets. I mean, there's 8 years of story behind this, but the way it started was ultimately that I wrote out like a 15-page script and we shot it over a weekend for fun. And then we got a better response than we anticipated. And that was the beginning of it.
Sure. So you clearly have a martial arts background. Like, I wouldn't have any idea how to create a parody on being an ER doc. I've never worked in an ER. So you must have a background in martial arts.
Yep. Yeah. I began studying Okinawan Kempo and Kabuto, the weaponry stuff in high school, partially because I had a smart mouth and I was getting in scuffles and I was losing because I didn't know how to fight.
Where'd you grow up?
In a town called Turner, Maine. It was a very, very small town, rural town, and I was kind of an angry teenager, and I knew how to talk smack, but I didn't know what to do when somebody turned around and punched me in the face. And so I got punched in the face a few times, and I was like, I should probably learn how to block those or something. Right. And so my mother signed me up. After a particularly good ass kicking, signed me up for karate. And it was kind of the beginning of a whole nother path of life for me, because it was a very traditional school, very disciplined, very structured, good people. A gentleman named Rich Pelletier's Karate Do, which is still in business in Maine. He passed away, unfortunately, several years ago, but he was a great instructor, great community leader. It was a great group of people, and it sort of set me on a path of having somewhere to put all that energy, all that teenage angst and frustration and everything. It had me working out. It had me, developing my flexibility, learning kata, learning weapons, learning how to spar, learning all these things. And it was very, very, I feel very, very fortunate that happened, because it kind of set me on, it's benefited my life in so many ways. And that was the beginning of it.
So I could surmise that if you weren't a smart ass, we wouldn't be talking right now. Right?
Yeah. I'm still a smart ass. I think I have more restraint than I used to. Sure. But I also, I have a very sarcastic view of the world, and I can't help it. And Ken has become this fantastic vessel for all the things that I feel really bad. Actually, I had to tell a joke. I did a local TV interview on a local show on Friday, and I had to tell a Ken joke, but I had to tell it as myself. Oh. And everyone laughed, but I'm like, I prefer it when it's Ken.
You couldn't hide and say,
I can't hide. So now whenever that ends up online, I have to own it because it's fully me. Ken gets away with things that I can't normally get away with. But yes, I'm still a smart ass. I just think I've managed to find a way to contain it. I've got a buffer a little bit.
The world needs more smart asses, I think. We are taught to pretend to not be us. My third grade teacher, Mrs. Halbensleben, 4'2" little German lady. She still when you could smoke in school, she fish hooked me. Literally fish hooked me and drug me out in the hall. Mr. Diarrhea Mouth. That was my name in third grade. A little private Christian school. Yeah.
Yeah, I spent if it hadn't been for theater and martial arts, I wouldn't have had anywhere to put that stuff because I was getting kicked out of class. I was, and I feel bad for the teachers now because I was thinking, man, I could draw attention by being a goofball and a class clown and all that stuff. And I must have made their job so hard because I'm sure they weren't thrilled about, especially substitute teachers. It's like, they're just trying to get through the day and I'm being a smart ass. But it also helped me hone some comedic skill to understand what made people laugh and why, and how to set a premise and how to, and I watched a lot of comedy throughout my childhood and teenage years and began to understand, I could recognize structure and pacing and timing and things like that. And ultimately ended up becoming, there are things that I still use in my career today. But I agree with you about the need, particularly now, for humor and smart asses. And I think it's very important, actually.
Yeah, we're way too serious. Like a common theme in the genre of society that I live and work in is like men are being bred to be pussies. And it's like, well, I don't know if I believe, like, I don't look at it that cut and dry, but like, why can't we just like laugh and enjoy it? And not that the whole life, our life should just be like laughing and enjoying, but like nothing is allowed to be a joke anymore. I said something the other day to somebody and they misinterpreted what I said and they're like, you're a racist. I'm like, not only am I not a racist, but you're a dumbass for calling me a racist.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Again, having been, I'm still kind of reeling from the experience of SHOT Show because I've just never been to an event like that, of that scope of that many people in the military and law enforcement. And one of the things that I appreciate so much is how many people said, hey, we appreciate you bringing humor to a job that does not, doesn't really have room for it. Guys saying, hey, when we're deployed, we pass your videos around to sort of just break the tension, to watch some funny stuff for a second and to just lighten the load. I've had, veterans send me stuff saying, hey, I have PTSD. And when you upload a new video, it just gives me a moment, a break from this. So I feel like that's sort of the function of humor is, like you said, not to treat everything like it's a joke. Life is hard enough on a daily basis without having a moment to breathe and laugh. And I think we need that now more than ever. And I think that it's a very volatile time for humor. It's very tricky. And that's very interesting to me. But I really appreciate when people who have really tough jobs, military, law enforcement, whatever, high stress medical field, whatever they're doing, and they deal with real life and death stuff every day. And they say, it's just nice to like watch a 2-minute video, get a laugh, and sort of be able to break the tension for a second,
Yeah. Which now again, it makes me think, looking at teachers or even parents, mentors of any kind that try to suppress that in a young person or a young adult. And it's oftentimes, I guess some of that might just be societal, but that person is not understanding the long-reaching effects of what somebody like yourself, or like, I'm sure you've read all about the Three Stooges, their life story. You seem like the kind of guy that would know a little bit about, like, those dudes grew up poor, and Hollywood basically made millions off of them, the big studios, and they made a pittance, but they as children, and I'm not trying to make this about them, but just it's a good example that popped in my head. You have no idea of what the effects of our life does for others. So something like a a guy in the sandbox or a ER doctor that needs that mental break, that decompression. That's big stuff. Rather than,
Absolutely.
I think there's a
And it
fine
lives
line.
on too. And like when you're like the Stooges is a great example. And yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me. I was fascinated when I read about them. I'm a huge Stooges fan and got like the book like Stooge Mania about their lives and their history and everything. And had the Three Stooges game on VHS where you had like cards and they would show clips from the movie and you had to like play along and all that stuff. I would always rent the cassettes that had like 3 episodes per cassette on them, you know, the old, back when we used to have video stores. But the idea that, yeah, they never really made any money off of this, yet the cultural effect that they've had for so many years and the joy that period of time where they were making these short films still lives on and affects people in a positive way. I mean, there's a lot of weight to that.
Yeah, it's huge. And that I think, you know, the big picture, guys might watch what you do. My daughter last night, as I was prepping for this, I was showing her a few videos on TV and she's chuckling, but like hasn't spent years in a dojo. And so to her, it's just some dude in a mustache. But when you start to have that connection, that's important. I think it's usually important. So SHOT Show had to be pretty intense. I was there a couple years ago and ran into Joe Rogan, and he, like a guy like that there, probably can't even move 2 feet without somebody grabbing him. So you were like, you were at the Oscars, so to speak.
Yeah, we got a taste of that. I mean, we honestly didn't know what to expect because we've never been to an event like that. We normally do martial arts trade shows and award shows and things like that. So to be at something where and to see such massive crossover was inspiring. We were like, oh gosh, we didn't realize how many people watch our show. We just see it as numbers on a screen. You know, we watch our analytics every week and see how many people watched a video, how many people shared it, commented, things like that. But we don't see them. You don't see, you know, you say, oh, 10,000 people. Oh, I guess that's okay. And then you see 10,000 people in a room and you're like, no, that's a lot of people. Like 10,000 people is a lot of people. And so when we experienced that crossover, it was just we get these glimpses of how far-reaching having your own show or podcast or whatever it is can be. And when you get to meet the people who really appreciate it, it's powerful. It's great.
We do most of the stuff on our YouTube channel is training related, and so the one metric I look at is watch time, minutes of watch time. Yep. And at one point we were hovering around 25 million minutes every 28 days. And I'm like, that's a lot of time. So I started doing the math and I'm like, man, that's like 46 years every 28 days of people watching. And people will send us like a picture off their phone that they're in a gun store in Toledo. And it's my face, like behind the counter, you know, saying like, this is a gun, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. and it's like, wow, that's pretty crazy how this platform has allowed people like you and me that don't, and I can't speak for you, but I don't have the funds to go compete against these companies that pump DVDs out across the country.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's an incredible time even just what we're doing now, being able to be in different locations, high quality video, high quality sound, and the tools that we use to make our videos being accessible, affordable. I feel, it's amazing. Like, these things shoot better video than some of the cameras I had in film school. And it's a fraction of the cost. So I feel very fortunate that we are able to make content as freely as we can. Of course, the other side of it is like, there's so much of it. So distinguishing yourself in the field is challenging, but I think that makes us better too. There's a lot of competition out there. So you gotta be on your game, and you gotta make sure you do good work and connect with people. But I feel super fortunate because if it wasn't this, I don't know if the things that I wrote and the character of Ken and the world that I created, I don't know if that would have been able to navigate the Hollywood system, because I've done a bunch of meetings out there too. When the show was newer, like season 1, season 2.
How long ago was that, by the way, Matt?
Gosh, that's season 1 debuted August 5th, 2011.
Okay.
So we're going on 8 years. And at once the channel hit 1 million views, we're at 57 million now, but when we hit 1 million views, I got a call from a management company, some band, I'm going to forget the name, and they're really cool. I can't think of the name, but some band that knew this management company said, hey, you got to check these guys out. And they gave us a recommendation. I got invited out. So the day after I finished shooting season 2 of Enter the Dojo, I drove to LA and just took a week of meetings and bounced around, and nobody really knew what to do with us. They liked the show, but they were like, let us know if you do anything else. And I was like, okay, I guess that's, and then a year later, I went out there again and developed a show with some folks, and it never went anywhere. So I honestly don't know what, if anything, would have happened with the content if it had to go through traditional channels. So that's another reason I'm so, I feel so lucky that I'm in a time where not just the tools for production and post-production, but for distribution are so accessible that anybody can build a following if they can find the right audience. Yeah.
And I've got a few family members in the music business, and they've been around long enough that it was back in the day you had to have a label or a radio station and get the manager to play music. I've got a few friends that in music, not family related, and we just had this discussion, and same problem though. You go on YouTube or all of the different streaming media platforms, and you can find 1,000 amazing vocalists and 10,000 amazing guitarists, and it's almost nauseating. Like, one of my siblings is a singer and songwriter, and it's like, shit, you're good, but so are these 20,000 other chicks I'm watching that are singing in their living room. Like,
right. And you know, I mean, and I took pride in a lot of the short films that my friends and I made. I mean, they were full-on productions. We were partnering with a film program. We had help from the union. We had a little bit of funding. I mean, we made these films.
What were they about? Anything in particular, or random stuff?
I used to dabble more in the horror genre because and I wasn't even that much of a horror fan. I had read that a lot of big directors got their start making scary movies. So I was like, oh, I'll do that.
And seeing a pattern here.
Yeah, I sort of just, I saw some overlap, and I thought, okay, so I made some of those, and they were big scale productions. We did one where we had like a zombie Western kind of thing, and we had a full working Western town, and we had a 5-ton grip truck. We had 30 extras. It was this big thing.
Yeah, you got all kinds of stuff there.
Yeah, but the thing was, it wasn't so much the quality of the production. It was identifying an audience. And so I made, I don't know, I can't even tell you, maybe at least a dozen films like that on very large scopes with a lot of help and a lot of production value and everything. But we didn't identify an audience. It wasn't until we found our niche that people recognized. You know, we were, because myself and my team of actors and crew we were doing the same quality of work all those years. We just never found the way to get to an audience. And then once we found that,
competing against Universal and all these huge studios that are pumping out horror films.
Exactly. And you know, exactly. So it was like impossible to compete. And then we do this then we find this thing, and we find a way to get it to people online. And then all of a sudden, all the eyeballs that we have been looking for all these years were there. And so it was like, okay, they got it. Okay. Martial arts comedy, I guess that's our thing. And then that's been sort of the thing we've done. And I've done other projects here and there, but over the years, I'm amazed at how people they just continue to be interested in this type of thing that we do. So we keep giving it to them.
How many folks, that's what I do during sexual encounters as well. How many people involved in your production? It looks like quite a few.
Yeah, it's like two sections. Basically, there's the seasons that we do, and we haven't done a season for a few years now. We did season 4. I want to say we shot season 4 about 3 years ago. And when we do that, that's like a cast and crew of 20 some odd people, 20 to 25 people. And we shoot every season very, very fast. Every season of Enter the Dojo, which is the sitcom kind of format of the show, versus the Master Ken skits. Every one of those seasons has been shot in 5 days.
Awesome.
And it ends up being
get in character and crank it out.
Yeah, just crank it out. We shoot like 10 to 12 hours a day. We shoot, I don't know how many pages. I mean, we just burn through scripts, and part of the structure of the show is helpful in the way that we do that, because once the dojo is lit, we're just ready to rock. We just shoot episode after episode. We don't have multiple locations. We don't have a lot of complicated effects. Since it's all sketch based, we're able to cover a lot of ground very, very fast.
I like it.
And so there's that has a bigger scope. And we used to do crowdfunding for season 3. We raised about $22,000 in order to pay for the production. And then there's the stuff we do a lot more of now, which is the skits. In fact, we kind of accidentally stumbled upon that in season 3 in the crowdfunding process. We found that one of the things we would offer people, if they gave us $100, we said, we'll send you a personalized video message from Master Ken. And he'll name your school, and he'll tell you why your martial art sucks. And we sold like 90 of those. We got like $9,000 worth of those videos, and we shot them all in like 4 days. And at first we were just going to send them to the fans that ordered them. And then we thought, some of these are kind of funny. Like, we should upload these. And we uploaded them, and they got the same amount of views.
And you got paid to do it.
And we got paid to do it. And we were like, well, what the hell are we doing this other thing for? That takes like weeks of prep and weeks of post-production, when all we can do is just goof off and say a couple of silly things and then slap somebody and then put it online. And so it greatly altered the production model and the business model. And we still did another season after that. But the return on the amount of time that we put in versus the viewership made a huge difference. Also, we found that those videos traveled a lot better because they didn't require context.
Yeah.
Like, somebody's not going to go and find your web series and watch episode 4 of season 3 without knowing what the show is.
Sure.
But 100 Ways to Attack the Groin speaks for itself. And that was shot in like 3 hours. And it's still our top viewed video. It's got like 4 million views. And it doesn't even need subtitles. It is what it is. And so exactly. So we found that when we did more sketch-based stuff, the views grew, the show grew, the brand grew. And so it's a lot more of that stuff now. We still, once in a while, we'll put some real production value into a shoot. And we're planning some pretty elaborate stuff for later this year. But what the show sustains on are those skits, those little sketch-based kind of concepts.
It fits with the mentality of the average human looking for entertainment now. It's
right.
Give it to me.
Yep.
And the way we buy things flippantly, Amazon, there it is, done.
Impulse. Yeah. Absolutely. Impulse stuff. And then also combining that with trending topics. We found that, like, when we were able to comment, like when Conor McGregor threw that dolly through the bus window, it's like we saw that on our phones and we were like, I guess we're filming tonight because we have to say something about this. Right. We, with no idea what the script was, that came across our phones at like 6 p.m. So by 9 p.m. we're setting up the camera and being like, I don't know, let's come up with something. Like, we have no script, no idea what we're going to do, but we know that if we can get that online within 24 to 48 hours of it happening, it's, probably going to hit tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of views just because it's something people are talking about. And so that's another aspect of it. Like, we have these skits that we script out very specifically and try to structure, but then something happens in the news and we're like, okay, toss that. We got to talk about this tonight.
Come back to that later.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sure. Are you really in New Mexico?
Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yeah.
In Albuquerque. Okay.
Yep.
I'm not. Go ahead.
I'm filming right now. My office is in the actual working dojo where Joe Conway, who plays Todd, it's his dojo. It's called ABQ Karate, and it's a functioning dojo during the day. And then we at nights or on weekends, we bring out the camera and turn it into Master Ken's dojo. But
you have an office there at the dojo. Is that where you train personally?
What's that?
Do you train there personally?
Yeah, I've been resuming my training in Kempo with Joe, and it's where I edit the videos, where we film. It's kind of our headquarters. Upstairs, we have like our wardrobe department and all our props and fake toy guns and swords and stuff that we use on the show and everything. So it's kind of doubles as like a dojo and a little production studio, actually.
That's awesome. So you've got that's great that you've got a friend that happens to own a dojo too.
It's kind of the reason the show is still going, because it's just so convenient to have an idea and be like, well, let's walk around the corner and shoot it.
Sure. You look pretty fit in your videos with your sleeveless. You look like you do some bench presses and definitely some arm curls. How often you work out? What's your story there?
You know, I will say, having your own show, and I imagine you might be able to relate to this, if you take video and photos of yourself on a daily or weekly basis, you're constantly reminded what kind of shape you're in.
Yeah.
You know, you gain 5 to 10 pounds, you're like, whoa, hey, you know, like you see it right away because you're editing your own footage.
One of my buddies that does stuff with us, one day I come out to the range and we're getting ready to film. He's like, hey, go back to the truck and grab a black shirt. What are you talking about,
man? And that damn red gi, I cannot hide in that thing. Like when I gain my weight, it's all in my gut, and then I put a big belt underneath my gut, and then it's bright red. It's bright red, and I'll look at the footage and go, man, some fatty's got to get on the treadmill here. I gotta like.
You got to get a compression shirt, sleeveless compression shirt underneath that. Basically, I'm talking about girdle. I'm saying
like Spanx. I got to wear some Spanx under there and compress everything, right?
Yeah, I do actually wear compressive shirts sometimes because we're training under a t-shirt, and I'm drawing a gun, and it's not that I don't want people to see my belly, but like filming, I'll draw 100 times and I'm scratching my guts up with gun. So yeah, I mean, like you might want to invest in one of those $20 on Amazon.
You know, now there's a record of it. People may notice now that videos released after this date. It's like Master Ken got really fit after that podcast interview.
Drew, edit at minute mark. That's funny.
But I do. I have a gym around the corner from my apartment. I do weight training and cardio, 5 days a week, and like I said, if I start to fall off from that. I have a reminder of seeing how I look on camera virtually every day as motivation to stay focused on it. So
we're probably about the same age, you and I. You look about the same age. I'm 40, and it's not the same as when I was a young man. So
for sure. The what I notice is the recovery. Like I can put myself through a good hard workout, but I don't bounce back the same way. I can, whether it's or like when I'm more, I dabble in jiu-jitsu, I fall in and out of it, and I'll start going to open mats and rolling with guys and fight really hard. And normally, like the next day, I'd be able to get up and go for a run. And now I roll out of bed and I'm like, oh God, like I remember somebody grabbing my neck and I'm like, okay, I can't work out today. I'm too messed up from those, 25-year-olds cranking me and slamming me into the mat and everything.
That's good point. My buddy, Pat McNamara, I don't know if you know who Pat is, T-Max, he's 54 and he's a freaking specimen.
Yeah.
And he feels that like 40 to 44 is a man's prime. And I'm like, why is there no 40 to 44-year-olds like, at bad
competitive sports?
Yeah. He's actually got like a whole argument about it, but I think I could beat up 25-year-old me.
Yeah.
I think 40-year-old me would smoke 25-year-old me. Maybe. I think I would. Like just because I probably I definitely know more than I did.
Yeah. Sure, there's the education, and then for me, I would probably be the desperation of, oh God, I can't lose to this guy because he'll kill me. So maybe it's just be that survival instinct. I'm like, oh God, I really can't lose. This guy's going to hurt me if I don't beat him.
Exactly. That's funny. So, like, do you guys have any full featured films planned for this character?
We've been talking more and more about that because we get asked so often about a Master Ken movie, and one of the biggest questions has been, do we do it in the spirit of Enter the Dojo, the sort of sitcom, set in the dojo with all the different students and everything? And I'm open to that, but I guess I'm a lot more, the idea that I like is putting the character of Ken in like an 80s action kind of thing, but in a ridiculous sense, essentially, you know, making Ken as ridiculous and oblivious as he is, sending him on a mission or something. Like he's got to fight crime in Albuquerque or some weird thing. But we keep talking about, I just literally had a conversation about this yesterday with a filmmaker who wants to try to help us put something together, because I think people would really enjoy it. And we're also in the great position of, we already have an audience. So it's not like we're making a film that's about a totally different subject that we don't even know if anyone's going to want to see. It's like, if we make the movie and nobody wants to buy it, we just release it on YouTube for the fans. And we'll just be like, hey, here's this cool movie we made. You know, we tried not to spend very much, but we still had a lot of fun. And we know that there's at least a set number of people, maybe 100,000 people, who would really appreciate it. So it keeps us leaning toward the idea of like, maybe we ought to just go and make this low budget adventure movie and just put it out on YouTube. If nobody would, like I said, if nobody wanted to buy it and release it in a bigger way, we've already got our audience, you know?
I'd like something that's got more of a storyline. I want to know where this guy came from. I want to know what kind of mother he had.
Right.
I want to know, I think that'd be hilarious. Like where did he grow up? Was he like a little Catholic schoolboy? You know, what was
it's funny about that too. One of the other things that we joked about was like, what if Ken, there was a biopic, but he insisted in starring in it at every age as himself. So he's like playing 6-year-old Ken. He's like in a classroom as 6-year-old Ken. You know what I mean?
Pretty freaking awesome. Yeah. I just thought about that.
Because people constantly ask us about the origin. They want to know how Ken became
as a grown man. Like elbow checking kids.
Right. His first real fight. So we have a lot of fun ideas. I think it's just been a matter of like figuring out when the right time is. And it seems like this year would be a good year to attempt it, because we just have these the interest in the show and the audience rises and falls. But the last 6 months or so, it just seems to just keep growing. Like we just keep getting our Instagram and our Facebook have been getting more and more engagement. Our audience is just growing faster and faster. So it just seems like it wouldn't be a bad time.
TV is dying. You know, like we have no cable in our house for the last 4 years. Of course we have internet, but I'll sit at night. There's this dude on YouTube, Donut Media. I'm not even a car guy. Have you ever seen it?
No.
I'm not a car guy. I think they've got about 1 million subscribers. And this guy, he's on Instagram too. I forget his name. But he sits and talks about any car you could think of. He's got hundreds of videos, and he legitimately talks about the history of the vehicle, but in such a hilarious comedic way. And then in every episode, he makes some joke about why his dad or how his dad left his family. Like he'll talk about like how Ford stopped making such and such motor, and they left it at the curb, and then he'll look at the camera and be like, kind of like my dad when I was in 3rd grade. And just like every episode he does this. So but my wife's like, are you really watching this again? Like, what do you care about a Maserati? And I'm like, shut up.
Right. You know? Like, I like it. I don't even know why I like it. Yeah. I mean, that is something I will say. Yeah. As far as like, again, the traditional media versus the new world, like the new world of media, like the number of times that I'm at home and I start watching a show, but then somebody sends me a YouTube video and I like pause that, and then I watch that YouTube video, and then it recommends another, and I'm like, watch that. And then like 2 hours later, I'm like, I'm now down the rabbit hole of YouTube again. Yes. And I'm not necessarily, it's not like I never watch movies or TV shows, but I find myself, because I work in that world, I'm fascinated by what gets an audience, what gets out there, all the different genres of stuff. Like you said, things that you would never particularly think that you're interested in. There are entire channels on YouTube that are dedicated to people eating honeycomb.
That's cool.
That's all they do. They just sit there and they just eat honeycomb. And this is like a thing, and they have millions and millions of views, and people just sit there and just take big old bites out of honeycomb, and that appeals to people enough to sit and just watch it. And so you can take two perspectives on that. You can be like, oh, that's really dumb. Or you can say, isn't that fascinating that there are endless subgenres of content that draw audiences for all kinds of reasons, and we're in that world too. And so I find myself just as interested in that kind of stuff as mainstream anything. I'm just fascinated by what's out there.
I got a brother that went to film school, so when you said you did, it piqued my interest. He went to what's the one in Chicago? Tribeca? The one that that De Niro.
Where's Columbia? No, Tribeca's in New York, right?
Which one did he go to? It's the one that De Niro's part owner in. It's a big.
Okay.
I can't think of the name of it, but anyway, like we've had this conversation about it. Like my wife recently started watching some sitcom on YouTube from her youth, and I'm watching. I'm like, it's just so dumb. The canned laughter and like walk on the set, walk off the set, and just it's dumb. And like that was some other person's idea of what we should find entertaining, and it was all that we had to watch. Now we watch some dude in a gi or this guy talking about cars. And by the way, his name is James Pumphrey, which I don't know if that's his real name, but I got to throw him up here so people can see him. That's his He's got like 91,000 people on. He just tattooed on himself, by the way. He's Dodge paid him $10,000 to get their tattoo on his rib cage. Check that out.
Whoa.
See that?
That's pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Wow.
But like we watch things, we want to see like Cops. When that show came out, there was no reality. Like people say that that MTV show was like the first reality show. Like Cops was the first reality show.
Yeah, actually, funny connection. They filmed so many episodes of Cops in Albuquerque, the city had to tell them to stop.
Because it was such a crime-ridden town?
Well, yeah, because it was like there were so many opportunities to film episodes of Cops here, and the city was like, it's affecting tourism. It's making people afraid to come to Albuquerque, so they had to move. They had to like send them to Las Vegas or something like that because it was because there was a lot of opportunities to film in Albuquerque.
My wife's company, side note, is looking at purchasing some property in Albuquerque for like some off-site workforce.
Oh, nice. I love it here. I think Santa Fe and Albuquerque and New Mexico in general is a really beautiful place. It's been really good to me. It's provided a lot of opportunity. We're waiting to see, we're going to see how it affects the local film community. Netflix just bought Albuquerque Studios.
Oh,
and they're,
cool.
Yeah, they're going to be sending apparently a lot of productions to the state through the studios they just bought. So it's been a good place to do what I do.
Okay. I dig it. And you said you're from Maine. I've got a sister up in Maine in Little Cranberry Island, which is just outside of what the hell's the big park there?
Like Acadia?
Yes. Yeah. Just outside. So they're off the coast of like the main entrance to the park there.
Nice. Bahaba. Yeah.
I've not spent a lot of time down there. It's so spread out. I've been to spent a lot of time in Arizona and Texas and in that region, but not right where you're at. So as we're talking about the YouTube movie, it made me think of the what's the video that came out 2 years ago? It was like it's a YouTube production that's now gone completely mainstream, and it was like the '80s themed Karate Guy. What am I thinking of?
Not Cobra Kai. Kung Fury.
Kung Fury, yeah, the guy that does our editing loves that kind of stuff, and he comes over. We're reviewing some footage. He's like, "Hey, I know this is going to take a while, but watch this." I'm like, I don't want to watch this. I got the T-shirt now, and
no, that's a model that we I think we emulate that we would love to do. I think the thing that was the most fascinating to me about that was that so they launched that trailer, they do a Kickstarter. They try to raise like $200,000. They raise 2 or 3 times that. They take like a year or longer to finish the movie. They release it for free on YouTube. And they get tons of views. It ends up on Hulu. It ends up on Netflix. It ends up all over the place. And it was only like
Which by that point they're getting paid. Hulu.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they're getting licensed and everything. But they got the whole movie was like 32 minutes, something like 33 minutes, something like that. And I really love that because I don't necessarily think that movie should have been longer. And that's another thing that I really like about being in this new media world is that things can be however long they need to be. You don't have to fit in traditional time slots of no. It's either got to be 18 minutes or 22 minutes or 44 minutes. It's
the same point I was making. Yeah.
Yeah. Just make it however long it needs to be and then put it online. And if it's good, people will find it and they'll watch it.
It has to be an hour and 20.
Yeah. I love the idea that, and that's what we talked about too, is like, I think it's sometimes for a lot of filmmakers, it can be daunting to say, God, even like, not just subject matter wise, but the cost and the scope. It's like, how am I going to figure out how to make a 90-minute movie with so little resources or to keep it interesting for 90 minutes? And nowadays you can be like, just make it however long it needs to be. If it's 45 minutes and it's good and it's interesting for 45 minutes, great. If it's 20 minutes, great. If it's 2 hours, great. But make it within what you have available. And as long as it's the length that it feels like the story is supposed to be, people will watch it.
That's what we've done with our training videos. Initially, like when 6-7 years ago, researching like what numbers should be on YouTube, guys are like, all right, it's got to be like 7 to 12 minutes for your content. And so we did that. I'm like, this is not what I'm doing though. Like this, I can't pass on the information I want to, and it just doesn't work. So we started pumping out videos. We've got some that are almost 3 hours long, which is absurd. I have one of them 20 million minutes of watch time on it in like 6 months because people sit there and like veg out for 3 hours. And it's more or less like a long form class. So it's like a 3-day class condensed into a 3-hour video. And then the guys come sign up. But exactly to your point, like, well, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do what I want. And we'll see what happens. Yeah,
well, and we had that. We had a similar thing happen with the evolution of the show when we first did the Enter the Dojo, the sitcom format of the show. Everyone was saying you can't have anything longer than 4 minutes because no one will pay attention. And so we're like, okay, these got to be really short episodes. And so season 1, you notice, is mostly. I don't think there's an episode that is much more over 5 minutes. And then by season 2. It was like, well, it's hard to fit the story into those blocks. So I feel like, we might need to go a little bit longer. And then by season 3, we're making episodes that are 11 minutes, 14 minutes long, because now we have a dedicated fan base that wants longer content. And people's viewing habits have changed. My viewing habits have changed. When I'm the same as probably some of the people who are watching your 3-hour video, that if I'm doing something in my office that doesn't require me to focus, too much, like some repetitive task, and I just want to listen to something or play something in the corner of my screen, I don't want to have to pick a new video every 10 minutes. I want to click on something and be like, okay, this is going to be running in the background for the next 2 hours while I'm doing my thing, and it's something I'm interested in, and it's just sort of I'm taking in that information,
grabbing it.
And it's just really interesting how viewing habits have changed, and how, again, that provides opportunity to find whatever your audience is to match with the type of content that you want to make. And I think that that's great that we have that option, instead of, again, being forced into a box of, no, you're either making, a 30-second commercial, a half-hour sitcom, an hour-long drama, or a 2-hour movie. You have to make one of those. Instead, now people can sort of make whatever they want and try to find an audience for it.
It's like you said earlier, it is a golden time.
For sure.
Golden time. What does your family think about this character? So they probably, for your whole life, you were a smart-ass kid. Parties, you were yucking it up, I'm sure.
Right.
When this started to catch on and get big, what is family? You're at Christmas.
It's hard to. I think it's helped. Initially, they didn't really understand it. But I mean, they were always as supportive as they could be, but they didn't really understand what I was doing. Like, I would win a film festival. I'd be like, "Hey, call up," and I'd call my family, I won this film festival. And they'd be like, great, how much did you win? I'd be like, well, I just got like a plastic trophy. It's not like it's like,
it cost me.
right. I lost a ton of money in order to go and win this film festival.
I had to travel there. And
yeah, in Pahrump, I had to, or whatever. It's like,
and did they have a film festival in Pahrump, Utah?
They did, and I only know that because
I was just in Pahrump 3 days ago. No joke.
I have an award somewhere. I don't know where it is.
Pahrump?
From a film festival that happened in Pahrump.
Interesting. The town's got like 94 people in it.
I know.
No for cinnamon roll.
Yeah, well, there probably wasn't a lot of competition, which is probably why I won. But as far as what the family thinks now, I think they started to get it like once we've appeared on television a couple times. We were on America's Got Talent. We've been on, well, as first, it was brief, but we were on there, and we've done television interviews. We've been on the cover of magazines and things like that. So I think now they sort of see it as a real thing. But yeah, mostly they've always been pretty encouraging, and they just sort of like check in about what we're doing. And when we do videos that are perhaps a little bit controversial, sometimes I don't really hear anything. They're kind of like, oh God, when we pick certain subjects and things like that. But it's ultimately, I think they're just happy. They watched me struggle for many, many years, just trying to figure out how to get into the business, how to make a living, how to do anything in the entertainment business. So the idea that I can make a show, make my living, traveling and doing performances and making videos and things like that, I think they're just happy that I have the option to do what I tried for so many years to try to do professionally.
Do you look at it like you were trying for years, and this is a question as much as a statement about myself, or is it that you just were finding what would work for you? And I'm not trying to be cheeky about it.
No, that's true.
You were working your ass off, but you continued to you continued to dig until you found what would work, right?
Yeah, and quite honestly, probably taking too long to take the advice of others. There was a buddy of mine when I moved to LA briefly for like a year and a half right after high school, just to try to figure things out and realize I wasn't ready for that, and moved away. But I had a friend of mine there who had been a screenwriter there for many years. And I was only like 19 at the time. And he was like, I remember him telling me, I feel like this martial arts thing is your ticket. I feel like there's something there. And I was like, yeah, I'm not interested in that. I want to be a director, and I want to work in comedy and all this other stuff. And he's like, well, yeah, but maybe you could figure out a way. And I was like, and I didn't listen to him. And it took like 15 years after he told me that. And he wasn't the only person to tell me that. I just couldn't ever wrap my head around it. But I also feel like the timing of things is very important. I feel like, because I had been thinking for a decade about doing martial arts related content, but I couldn't ever figure out how. Like, what am I missing? Like, what's the structure of it? What's the style? And so, hopefully it's just one of those things that happened when the timing was right and when I was ready. And, so I try to take a perspective of that all those years I was learning how things worked. I was learning in film school. I was learning cinematography. I was learning editing. I was taking acting classes. I was learning the craft of it. I was also studying martial arts and bouncing around from dojo to dojo. And
developed all the ingredients you needed.
Exactly. And then one day I sat down and wrote a thing and was like, that's kind of funny. And then I handed it to somebody and they were like, that's kind of funny. And then, and then we were like, yeah, we should shoot this, and then it's sort of like, a bunch of seemingly trivial decisions led to, what it is now.
Sure. And that's the fun thing. So, like, I've got a buddy, and he's been on this podcast, a well-known Green Beret named Dave Harrington. And Dave says, everything's important. Everything matters. Do the right thing at the right time every time. And when I heard that from him the first time, and viewers have heard me repeat that, it's like, that's just some like ethereal, nonsensical statement that doesn't mean anything. But For example, if you weren't a smart ass kid, like I said earlier, I wouldn't know you. Like, so like everything does have value if you know how to attach some value to it, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Would you agree?
And figuring out how to play to your strengths too, like figuring out like, you know, what you're good at and how to play toward that. And I you know, I get inspired over the years, I would get inspired reading about people like Sylvester Stallone or Jean-Claude Jean-Claude Van Damme is another example. Like if you notice, like a lot of his early movies, he has a screenplay credit on a lot of his early movies.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, and he is like he and Sheldon Lettich and like, you know, the way they work together and stuff. You look at their stuff and it's like they understood how to build a vehicle around Jean-Claude Van Damme's strengths. They weren't giving him soliloquies to say. They were like brief dialogue, kick-ass action, and there are certain kinds of scenes that pop up in all of his movies that you start to notice like they really understand how to build a vehicle around this guy to play to his strengths. And I feel like there's a lot of successful artists that figure out like their wheelhouse. They have a list of things they do really well. And they're like, okay, well, let's just take those things and build a structure around it. And I think it takes
a good way of describing it.
Yeah, it takes a while to figure out what those are. And then to say, okay, I know I'm confident about these 3 skills. How do I build something around it so that I get to showcase these 3 things that I feel like I'm really good at?
That's a very refined or distilled way of doing things. I like that.
It also takes some of the, I feel like it's a good way to get things, to look at creating projects in a very practical sense, because I feel like it's easy to get lost in the abstractness of creating artwork and how to make something good and all this stuff, instead of looking at it from a practical standpoint of being like, okay, well, I feel like I've studied martial arts, I've studied comedic improv, and I've studied filmmaking a little bit. How can I put those together? You know, it's like, rather than, like you said, making a show about a subject you know nothing about, that you have no experience in and might not even be interested in, that's not going to resonate with audiences. So,
yeah, for sure. Talking about Jean-Claude, he was he's a bit of a funny guy too. Like some of the stuff whatever he was just doing, was it on Netflix?
Amazon.
Amazon. Yeah, I watched that. You know, that was some funny stuff. Like I remember the first one that they launched, and then it took forever for the series to continue.
Yeah, we were all waiting after that teaser, right?
Yeah. Remember the scene he's in? Like he's off on hiatus, getting his head right after like losing or whatever, and he's taking an hour with like San Pellegrino. Like he's supposed to be roughing it, but he's not. He's got Pellegrino, and he's just dumping bottles of that. Like, that's funny shit.
Yeah, I was psyched to see, because I remember him doing interviews for years saying he wanted to do comedy, and he just couldn't find the right vehicle. So I was psyched when they finally found a way to sort of package his persona, and again, playing to like what he's playing to his strengths, still making fun of his character and everything. I thought the show was great.
And they made that guy kind of that character was kind of doofusy and like Mr. Magoo-ish.
Yeah, but still with some badass action mixed in. Like
yeah. A friend of mine, Kung Lee, did a movie with him and said he was a really cool dude. I think it was called Dragon Eyes. Yeah.
Dragon Eyes. Okay, cool.
Like
cool.
2011 or 2012. Some good action scenes. Kung Lee was, he's a badass fighter. He's a world champion fighter. So he added a lot to it. Collegiate wrestler, and I think he was a UFC guy at one point. But like, not funny. The movie's has no comedy in it at all. But he had said that's just when you brought him up, and I'm looking at Bloodsport behind you. Does he have? Did he have anything to do with the production of that?
With what do you mean? So Bloodsport, we're talking about Jean-Claude. You said some of the earlier stuff was was he a producer in that one at all? Now the story, okay, now if somebody watches this and says I'm full of shit, then I will admit to it. But the story that I remember, I could have sworn I saw Van Damme say this in an interview, but if I'm wrong, then I'm mixing up my behind the scenes film stories. But the way I remember it is that they shot the movie. They looked at it. Canon, I think it was Canon, right? Yeah, Canon Pictures said this is unreleasable. We're not going to release this movie, which is saying something for Canon. And Van Damme said he would work on the film for free. He sat down and re-edited the movie himself.
Wow.
Or either with an editor or just by himself. And he said he was like, he had a regular job. He was like a bouncer or a limo driver or something. And on his off hours, he would go in and just recut the movie, trying to reshape it into what he felt like it could be. And that he actually had quite a bit to do with that movie ultimately being released, because they were just going to shelve that movie. And he was thinking, oh my God, like I've worked so hard to get here, and I finally got my debut film, and now they're not even going to release it. So, and that's another thing I really feel like I credit Van Damme for, is knowing what his brand is. He understood how to portray himself in a way that he understood his image really, really well. I feel, and then the other thing I feel like I remember from that is that movie was an unexpected hit. And he was still locked into Canon for like 3 more pictures at like $25,000 a piece. And he could have gotten 10 times that or more, because he was already a star. So they had to knock out these Canon films like really, really fast. He had to work for far below what his fee would have been for like 2 or 3 more pictures until he could finally get paid what he normally would have been paid. He was just thrilled to be signed to a deal at all. And then Bloodsport was such an unexpected hit that he was thinking, damn it, I could be getting $1 million for my next movie, but I'm locked into these other movies. So I think it's Cyborg and remember Cyborg?
Yeah.
It has that really messed up scene with the barbed wire where like the family's tied up in the well and they hand the barbed wire to the little girl and it like rips her hands off. And I'm sitting here at 10 years old watching this movie like, I thought I was writing a karate movie, and I'm like traumatized by these scenes because that movie was so dark.
I remember it.
That movie's so dark.
That was the coolest thing in the world to watch that movie.
Bloodsport is still, to me, one of the most iconic, martial arts movies ever made. It was the UFC before the UFC. I mean, taking the styles from all around the world and pitting them against each other.
The Kumite.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And I never would have thought, I've met Frank Dukes many times, and I never, watching that movie, would have ever thought that I would meet the guy that, that told the story that it was based on and everything. It's
serious controversy around old Frank as well.
I know. And I've talked to him about it, and I've read about it, and I've watched his interviews, and it's fascinating to me. I've even poked fun. I've roasted him at award shows about it, picking on him about, his autobiography and the controversy over whether or not the Kumite was real and all the things about it. He's been a really good sport about it. It's so bizarre to be. At
the end of the day, it created an awesome, iconic movie.
Oh yeah, it's like, regardless of what the real story is, it led to the making of one of the best movies, in my opinion, one of the best martial arts movies ever made.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would probably, yeah. Which to some people, they get bent about not naming Bruce Lee there, but I don't know.
Sure, I mean, yeah, and it's like, actually, but if you think about it, like Enter the Dragon is almost like, if you look at structurally, the movie Enter the Dragon and the movie Bloodsport, they're very similar. There's the secret tournament in the secret location, and there's all these fighters being grouped from different parts of the world that have different abilities, and they're coming together to prove that, Bloodsport doesn't have that sort of underlying criminal aspect of like the stuff that's happening on the island with the boss and everything, but they still have the revenge theme. Bruce Lee is avenging the death of, was it his sister? Who the guy with the scar was played by Bob Wall. They killed his sister, and he's kind of able to avenge his sister while being in the tournament. And then with Van Damme, he's avenging his buddy Jackson that he just met, but he's really upset that he got hurt in the thing. I remember like watching those movies in the same day and being like, these are very similar movies. These actually play on each other's strengths quite a bit. It's a very traditional structure of a movie.
I've read somebody comment that Frank maybe just created that story based on like a loose interpretation of the Enter the Dragon.
It wouldn't be crazy because when you watch, if you really sit down, and I do this thing sometimes where just when I've seen a movie a lot of times, I'll just sit down with a notepad and I'll just write the beats out of the movie. I'll be like, opens with fight scene, 2 minutes of dialogue, chase scene, because I'm fascinated by how particularly genre pictures are structured.
Okay.
I'm interested in how movies play to the genre, because it drives me nuts when somebody makes a genre picture and they don't put the only thing that I'm there to see in the movie, like an action movie where everyone's standing around and talking, or a horror film where nobody gets killed for 40 minutes. And you're like, why am I watching this movie? Why'd you call it a horror movie? There's somebody should die every 10 minutes. It doesn't even have to be a good movie. If I go see an action movie, it doesn't even have to be a good movie. Just make sure that somebody fights somebody every 10 minutes. And I'm fine with it. And so I'll kind of like sit down and write this. But I've done that to Enter the Dragon, written out the structure and thought, man, there's a fight scene like every 3 minutes. There's like almost every 3 minutes, there's some sort of action that happens in that movie. It's so well structured and paced. And honestly, if you watch Bloodsport, it's very similar. There's like
those two and put them together.
It's like they line up really well. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that sort of possibility, because
and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just read that once, and it seems
at very least it's a brilliant homage. We could, it's a brilliant homage to the genre.
And when we were kids, that's what we would argue about, like who could kick whose ass.
Yep.
Jean-Claude or Chuck Norris or. Yeah, we would be discussing that nonsense. And I had a karate teacher. I don't want to say too much because people in my area will know who he's talking about, but it was a Taekwondo gym, and he was very much Master Ken, except his mustache came all the way down to like here.
Okay.
Like he one time kicked me when I was on the ground, and I was like, second or third or fourth grade. And I tried to roll away, and he literally said to me, this is the honest to God truth, only in the movies, kid, as he kicked me in the guts as I was trying to get up. I didn't tell my parents, though, because I knew they wouldn't let me go back, or I'd go over my dad to go and confront the guy or something.
Oh, my God. That's great. And that's, when we talk about the show, and, we take breaks throughout the year when we're making content, and we sometimes say, like, there are times when we're like, maybe we're out of ideas. Maybe we've done enough. Maybe we've done enough videos, and we'll take a week off or a month off or however long. And then something will happen. And either I poke my head into Joe's office or Joe pokes his head into my office and he goes, hey, what would be funny? And then we're like, oh, that's a video. And then next thing, then we're back in the rhythm, and and I feel like, not only our experiences, but meeting other people who are from that world, who have experiences, if they've ever trained, whether it's in martial arts or in the military or any kind of self-defense or weapons training or whatever, keep giving us material that we're just like, we could make this show probably forever, to be honest, because there's so many wacky characters and so many crazy experiences.
Has Ken ever had a love interest in any of the shows or episodes?
The closest we've ever come to that is in season, I want to say it was season 2, but it might have been season 1. His senior student, Billy's mom, came in, and there was some kind of sexual tension between him and his student's mom, and it was I purposely wanted that to be extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That, like Billy idolizes Ken, and yet he kind of feels like Ken might want to bang his mom. It's this weird kind of thing.
I'll give you a private lesson later.
Right. There's like all these innuendos in that episode, but that's sort of the closest we've ever come to that, because so far it seems like it has really worked for the show. Ken's obliviousness, he's kind of asexual. He's kind of totally oblivious to any woman who might ever even be interested in him. And so much of his comedy, so much of the comedy we do on the show is framed as unintentional sexual innuendo that Ken never understands, that any of the things he's saying are incredibly dirty and incredibly suggestive. And that's sort of what makes it funny, is that he doesn't get that anything that he's talking about could be taken as uncomfortable or inappropriate.
If you gave him a girlfriend, then all of a sudden he's just a pervert.
Yeah, exactly. He might be kind of viewed differently. So I feel like taking an asexual direction with him, that his mistress is a Meridote, and that he really has no sense of what is attractive or what he would be interested in. There's virtually no part of that in Ken so far. I mean, who knows? Maybe someday we take it a different direction. How'd
you come up with a Meridote?
The name, I wanted it to be, how do I say this? There are a lot of
bullshit martial arts.
Yeah, basically a lot of things where there is a huge disconnect between the origin of the art and what is being practiced today.
Gotcha.
And I wanted the name to reflect that. I wanted to make sure that the name didn't technically mean anything.
Okay.
But in a conscious way. So saying a Mary as America, and then Do the way, and Te the hand, we could technically say, well, it means the American way of the hand, but really it doesn't mean anything. It's sort of like grabbing America and putting two random Japanese words together and saying, yeah, we'll call it that, because I've seen so many examples of homogenized, I guess I could say, but really just people sort of grabbing a little bit of this art and a little bit of that art, and then they throw some Japanese terms in there, and they're like, I made my own martial art. Now I got my own school. And they put a dragon and a tiger and some kanji, and then that's the whole thing. And so I wanted it to reflect that sort of the arbitrary kind of thing. It was the same with the tiger logo, It was just like,
to ask about the logo as I'm looking at it.
Yeah, a friend of mine designed that logo, and I said I want it to be like something that they thought was cool, but make the paws like really, really tiny. So it's like, it's supposed to be this really cool tiger, but it's actually these tiny little paws, and they don't understand that it's actually not. So yeah, a lot of it's all just kind of trying to poke fun at the lack of self-awareness and the lack of recognition of irony that exists in that world.
That's funny. Do you guys sell these sweatshirts? People buy them?
You can buy hoodies and T-shirts and autographed copies of the Master Ken book on.
What is the Master Ken book?
Oh, okay. Let me grab a better copy. Hang on. These are old copies. Let me get the new one. Hang on. Here it is.
The Master Ken book.
Boom. It's called The Tao of Master Ken. And
11th degree.
Yeah, it's basically we had been talking about doing a book for a while, and some people kept encouraging me to do it. Chris Casamassa, who played Scorpion in Mortal Kombat, he did a book and greatly encouraged me to do the same. And then a friend of mine who's an author who does she does a lot of animal training books, and is a good friend of mine. She lives in the UK. Her name is Karen Wild, and she offered to be my editor and help me put it together.
Yeah,
and
cool.
So I just, after tinkering with it for like 2 years, I would work on it every month and just sort of tinker with it. One day I was like, I'm going to finish this book this year. And that was last year. And yeah, it's kind of, it's a spoof of, I don't know if you ever had any of those, like the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, or Ed Parker's book on Kempo Karate Law of the Fist, like those old black and white kind of.
Yeah.
See, so do I. I have a whole library full of those old black and white martial arts instructional books. So it's purposely a spoof on those kind of things.
Okay.
And
so it's you talking about how to stomp the groin, and
yeah. So
I'll even Ken, rather.
I don't know if we'll do justice to it on camera, but like showing like, here's a gun defense of like grabbing the gun and putting your finger on it.
Well, that had to be fun, just doing all the pictures for that.
It was a blast. We're already getting ready to do another one because we had so much fun doing it, and it's been a great gift idea for people who know the show or people who know fans of the show or whatever. But anyway, enterthedojoshow.com is where you can get any kind of merchandise attached to the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. I don't want to take up your whole day, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk.
It was my pleasure.
I want to know. Listening in the background, you got some students back there talking?
Yeah, the kids are arriving for the kids class.
I want to know who would really win, you or Master Ken?
Ken, absolutely.
Ken would win.
Yeah. Matt Page is at best a hobbyist and more of a pacifist, and Ken is the polar opposite. Ken is Ken would definitely win. In fact, that's the biggest question that I feel like we're going to figure out how to answer is people seem divided on whether or not do they want Ken to be like the biggest badass in the world when he finally does some real action scenes,
or a puss,
or is he still totally just ridiculous and not, it's like we're sort of torn about that. So we're going to have to figure out where in that. I honestly don't know. I don't know where he should be on that spectrum.
Talking about that brought up a quick story. A friend of mine that created the Colonel Blade, which is it's a very cool fighting knife. I don't have one handy. He created it for a Tier 1 Army unit. And he himself has a long storied martial arts background. So he teaches some of this at some of our longer training schools that we do twice a year. And he has this whole speech, and he talks about letting Jack out. And he's talking about like normal folk like you and I, when it comes down to actually needing to fight for our life or for the life of another, it can't be Mick, the law-abiding citizen, or Matt, the artist. It has to be like, for him, it's Jack and Ripper. And he talks about it, and he goes through the speech, and all the students, like, their eyes get big because he's talking about, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you for fun just to get to you. And then he'll start asking, well, if you and I fight, who's going to win? And they're like, well, you. No, you're going to win. And so he's trying to get them to develop this alter ego. Like some people say, flip the switch. So, like, I'm now thinking about letting my Ken out. Like that'd be like my goofy. I do a character that's more of a Frenchman. I grow a big mustache, and every once in a while I'll shave just the stash off, and I get my chef's hat. And he's kind of a French-Italian dude, and I'll grab my Beretta pistol and do some stupid shit about my fine Italian Beretta pistola. And like that's like when I'm cooking, the kids, they want to hang out with that guy because he's funny. Or like at Christmas time making cookies. He's Luigi is what I call him. But,
nice.
It just made me think about like all the things we can do with Ken now. Like I'm going to use him in class. I'm going to talk about like the people that are too freaking uptight. You got to let your Ken out, man. I'm going to rub their shoulders.
Yep.
My mustache on the back of their neck a little bit.
Yep. I love it. I in fact, that gives me an idea for a couple things. So,
well, good. This was profitable then.
I love it. I love it. But I will say, one of the parts I relate to most about that is the fact that when I'm getting ready for a performance, particularly if it's a big audience and everything, I get nervous. But there is a point where, like, when I'm in costume and when I look in the mirror and I've got the whole thing on and the mustache and everything's like set, where Ken kind of takes over. And like, I'll walk into a room with a lot of people who are probably way better, who definitely are way better martial artists than me, but Ken don't care. Ken don't give a shit.
I saw the picture of you with Hoist Gracie recently, and I've met Hoist before. And looking at, you're a pretty big, thick dude, and Hoist is diminutive and slim and trim. And so it's kind of chuckling. You got your 11th your show.
Right. Twice I've had the opportunity to tell Hoist in front of a group of people how he should be doing his ground fighting as Ken. and he laughs and everything. This time after I did that presentation and everybody had kind of dispersed, Hoist kind of comes up to me and he's like, so you want to fight me? And I'm like, no, wait, this is just we're just doing comedy here.
You should have rolled with him for a couple minutes just for fun.
Yeah, for fun. Then there'd be footage of Ken getting choked out by Hoist Gracie.
Like up in the corner.
Right.
That would have been awesome.
Well, I'm hoping someday we could actually figure out a way to do a video with him, because we've had some really great martial artists on the show, and I want to do more of that. And honestly, the truth is, the better the fighter and the more accomplished the martial artist, the more fun they tend to have when they come and goof off with us, because they're really open. They're fine with it. Oh yeah, exactly. They've proven themselves. They're very confident. So I'm sure eventually we'll come up with something like that.
Do you shoot guns at all?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, there's some friends here, friends of mine. It's a thing me and my dad have been doing since I was a kid. Yeah. And there are some guys here that have that actually do some tactical training for some of the actors in town, because of the number of times, and it's happened to me, it's happened to other actors here, where you end up on set, you're playing a SWAT guy or a special forces guy, but you're not one of the lead guys, and so you're in a scene, and they just walk up and they just hand you a gun, and they're like, "All right, get ready." And some guys have never. They're like, what do I do? They don't even know how the weapon works. So some guys who have some military training and stuff have taken some of us actors out and to the range and done some, just shooting steel targets and transitioning from a rifle to a pistol and reloading and stuff like that. It's super fun. I love doing all that stuff.
I think, just so people know, a lot of folks don't realize that you've done a bunch of other acting.
Yeah, I've managed to get in a few other movies. I've got an IMDb, and worked on stuff like Scorch Trials and Odd Thomas, and bunch of fun stuff. I've gotten to shoot. I got to shoot a gun on. I got to shoot one of the main characters and In Plain Sight. So anytime I get to do, I actually love whenever I get to do action-y type stuff on those shows, whether it's fighting or weapon stuff. It's super fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What's
next for you? Just going to keep cranking this guy out? You're going to develop any new characters?
I'm looking at a whiteboard that's full of new content for the channel for the next, few months. And I've got this other action series that I wrote that I feel like would be well suited for an online thing, like a YouTube thing or whatever. It's not really comedic. It's much more in the action genre, but it's something I'd like to try that is much more sort of focused on an episodic action-based kind of a thing. So I'm hoping that I can do that this year, because. Will
you be the star?
I would. It's sort of like there's different characters every episode, kind of a thing. There's one I might be in, and then there's several others that I would sort of try to look to some of my martial artist friends that I've met through the show to try to be characters on the show. So could be cool.
Very cool. Yeah. I look forward to it. You guys that are watching this, if you have not watched any of his Master Ken skits, which I probably will guess if you've watched our stuff, you've seen him at least once. Somebody's forwarded you some of this goofy shit on Facebook. I guarantee it. Go check it out. It's hilarious. And give him a follow. I need to buy one of the sweatshirts, so I'm going to go to the website after we're done here because I think that's cute. Does it say anything on the back?
Yeah, it's got the Ameridote logo.
Nice.
I don't know if that shows up yet.
No, I see it. It's coming in good. That's fantastic. I think the broader point that I'd like people to take away, besides all of your awesome humor, though, is that you stuck the course. There's usually behind anybody that's got any measure of success in life, music, art, sciences, industry, nothing comes easy that's worth a shit. And so I appreciate that.
It's very true. It's very true. And I feel like I know that I've watched a video a quick interview with Bryan Cranston talking very similarly about the idea that if you really are sure about something you want to do and you love it enough, that I believe I don't want to mischaracterize what he said, but I believe what he said was that he essentially had no backup plan, that he just he decided he was going to be an actor. And that was it. And whatever that meant, whether it meant he was going to be broke or whatever it meant, that he decided this was for him. And he kind of just, and like you said, stayed the course. And I've had many moments of doubt over the years where I'm like, gosh, should I be doing this? Is this always going to be this difficult? But it took, 15 years of just trying all these different ways and learning all these really hard lessons until something caught a little bit of a glimpse of attention and success. And, but I realized, like your friend said about everything being important, all the lessons I learned along the way prepared me for that. And it, like, when the timing was right, it came together. But man, it's hard when you're halfway through that journey and you don't know where it's going to end up going, should I keep doing this? And I always ultimately fell back to, you know, I just can't think of anything else I'd really be as passionate about. I love doing this so much. I love entertainment so much. I love writing and acting and directing and editing. And I enjoy the action stuff, the martial arts stuff. And I was like, I'm okay with, even if this never pans out, I'd rather do this than anything else. And so that kind of going for broke attitude is sort of what you need to do.
It would be depressing to me. I know I have family and other people that they look for a path in life that will provide them, maybe not comfort's not the good word, but stability. Yep. And that, I'm not knocking it, but to me, that is the most depressing choice of use of my trajectory of life from cradle to the grave. Like, to find I want to be comfortable. I want to be stable, but I've got a friend that works at the post office and hates it. He hates his life. But he's been there 30 years. Right. Like, dude, what are you doing? Like, well, you know, once I'll retire, I'll have this 401k and then what? Like, all of that life that you hated, like, is just burned up and gone, man.
Yeah, I'm saying I respect, you know, people who want to make that choice. I understand it. I do understand it. But I remember when I was particularly broke, a friend of mine asked me to be in a music video, and we drove up into Los Alamos, into the mountain, like the hills of Los Alamos.
Parachute pants on.
If only. I was dressed like a greaser. I had like a leather jacket and like a wife beater and jeans, and I had to be killed by this monster. And they forgot to bring food, so all I'd had was like an apple, and I was standing out in the cold, and it was like 2 a.m. and they mixed a bunch of fake blood with chocolate syrup, and they had to like fill my mouth up with it, and I had to gargle this fake blood all over my face and everything, and I'm freezing my ass off, and I was standing there in the freezing cold realizing, like, I still love this. There's literally nowhere else I'd rather be than on the set of this crazy music video that I don't even know if anyone's going to see, and I'm covered in fake blood. But like, I could be sitting at some boring job that I freaking hate, you know, or I could be doing this crazy stuff, you know, like
good vision insurance.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like doing something I hate. And so, you know, I still feel like the worst day on set is better than the best day doing something that I don't want to be doing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that all of that comes from a belief in self. Like, I don't feel I'm better or smarter than anybody, but I will outwork most anybody I know. And it's not like I'm some like animal that'll carry like loads of cement up a mountain. But like you're saying, I don't know how many people will look at our YouTube channel, they're like family, and they're like, oh, well, you're making a ton of money. And it's like, like you have no idea the six figures that we've spent over the years producing content and lighting and cameras and just travel, ammunition to shoot the videos, just all that crap. The guys actually have to sit and edit and film and stuff. Like, yeah, YouTube pays us some money, but it'll take a long time before I recoup the investment. But at that time, though, and even to this day, like, I know it's going to cost me $3,000 to film this, and maybe I'll make $500 a month off the video, or $200 a month. I don't care. I'd spend 3 times as much if I had the, it's not like I've got some limitless supply, but to what you're saying, I agree. It's the same thing. And it's because we love it.
Yeah. And that goes, and I still carry over that attitude of, like, you know, back in the day, even when I used to, like in film school, I used to shoot on film, like 16 millimeter film. And so I'd be like, okay, how can I pull together? I can't shoot this movie for less than $1,100 because I have to buy the film stock, and I have to develop the film stock, and then I have to transfer it. And I would look at, you know, a lot of times I'd be in a position where I'm like, okay, so I have $1,175. So if I just take that $1,100 and I spend it on my movie, I'll still have $75 to buy groceries and put a little bit of gas in my car. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. And I would live like that. I just told somebody recently that, like, I knew my movie was done when my phone got shut off, because it was like, oh, okay, now they're starting to turn things off. So now my movie's done, because I literally have no money now. So apparently I can't keep working on this movie. I have to go back and put myself back together financially. But again, I was learning my craft. I was doing something I loved. I was super passionate about it. And a lot of the skills that I was developing back then, I use today. I absolutely use today. And I had to learn all those skills when nobody cared about what I was doing, when nobody was interested in what I was doing. I had to go and make those mistakes and then learn from them so that I could get better. And that's what it takes.
People have heard the story of Coronado burning his ships, which is not a true story. You've heard this story, though. It didn't actually happen, but I think it's, I don't know how many family members, like my daughter's graduating high school this year, my son's in college, and I hear family members that care about them ask about what's your backup plan. And I look at my kids because they know I've got a speech on a backup plan, and the kid will tell them, they'll be nice to grandma or aunt so-and-so, but backup plan, you know, like if you have to, Tony Robbins wrote a book years ago, and he talks about sitting and washing his dishes in his bathtub of his crummy apartment, and his car was broken, you know, the whole, some people like expect that you have to have that, but I think that makes you so hungry. Not to mention, if you've been that hungry, sitting on the side of the road, eating an apple with frozen blood on you, it's like, it ain't a big deal.
That's so true. It makes you kind of fearless, right? Like, cause if you've had nothing, or even if you've like, and like, you know, on your path to whatever goal you're reaching, you gain a little bit and then you lose it. And then you gain a little bit and then you lose it. And you learn these tough lessons, but it also, there's a fearlessness to that I really relate to, where I've had the thought before multiple times where I'm like, well, you know, if this whole thing crashes and burns, it's not like I don't know how to live cheap. It's not like failure is a new thing for me. I've crashed and burned so many times. I've lost all my money several times, and then I've always managed to rebuild it. I've always managed to take a lesson from it. And it sucks when it's happening. You know, it still stings when you get defeated or you don't reach your goal. But it gives you that courage too, where you're like, you know what? Worst thing that happens is that they say no, or nobody watches this, or I burnt all my money on this thing and I thought it would work out and nobody did. Okay, well, I'm going to dust myself off and try it again, you know? And I feel like that is, I feel like it's a necessary part. It's actually a really valuable part of the process.
The majority of people that look at folks with any measure of success, I don't think are aware of what is required, and often are judgmental. Like I hear somebody say must be nice. Oh, must be nice. This guy puts on some stupid mustache, acts like a douchebag, and everybody wants to shake his hand. Like not knowing 15 years, you know, teachers yelling at you because you're a smart ass, mom saying, what are you going to do with your life? And getting cut out of movies, like, you know, like finally getting a role in a movie and telling everybody I know, like, hey, I'm in this movie, and then they all go to see the movie, and I've been edited completely out of the movie. You had to keep your mouth shut now, didn't you? Right.
You only do that one time. You only do that one time, and then you're like, don't tell anybody that you're in the movie. Just if they notice, say, oh, thank you for noticing, but don't tell them you're in the movie.
We as a people, I think, are too used to that instant gratification. And then, you get that defeat you're talking about. And the way you just described it, some people may hear that and think, well, isn't that a backup plan? I don't view it as that. It's you understanding, like, okay, this up, down, but eventually that up, down is like an upward trend. Yeah. My daughter's got a 2000 Jeep Cherokee that I was having to do some work on last night. It's sub-zero temperatures up here, and the heat went out. And so I'm driving it around and I'm freezing, and it's nicer than any car I ever owned as a young man. It's a 2000 Jeep Cherokee, you know, whatever. But I'm laughing because I'm sitting in there. Now I drive a truck that blows cold air out of the seats up my ass crack in the summertime. Literally, you know, it's got every bell and whistle under the sun. And I'm driving that Jeep and I'm thinking, like, man, how lucky am I? Or not even lucky, but like how quickly we forget too. Like, I'm driving this thing with no heat. I drove cars that never had heat or air conditioning or anything for my whole life.
Yep.
No, have one brake that actually worked.
I think about that too. Like when what an achievement it is to get to a point where I could afford a car payment, where I knew that my car was going to start every morning when I got out and started it. And that's like a holy, wow, this is like a big deal. Because I remember I drove a Hyundai that there was like a hole underneath the gas pedal, so my foot would heat up when I was driving it.
I put carpet, 2 layers of carpet. I hate this.
And you have those things, and when you're in that moment, it's funny later. At the time, I'm like, oh my God, my life sucks. Like my foot is burning off just trying to drive this piece of shit.
All smooth
from melting your foot. But again, yeah, like then years later, you're just you're in a car that you could take for granted, but then you get that flash of memory of like, man, I used to just pray that my car was going to start. And if it didn't, I had to figure out how I was going to get to work. And now just that upper level is something I can be grateful for. But the trick is you got to go through it first. You got to go through the crappy times where you're like, life is not as good as it could be. And then later on you look back and go, wow, I've made some progress,
What you're describing, I think oftentimes people forget that have achieved different things, or like if you came from like a more elevated level of life. My parents weren't like broke, but my parents had 11 kids. There wasn't a lot to go around. I joke, I wore my older sister's Jordache that had the little zipper. Remember the little zipper on the side of the outside of the and I was the oldest boy. I remember dudes at school were like, those are girls' pants. I'm like, no, like, no, they're not. Like,
you didn't find out till you were at school. You're like, oh, geez.
Well, I knew they were my sisters, but my mom's like, they're unisex. Jeans are jeans. Like, there's a little zipper. Like I was like in 4th or 5th grade, and I was the littlest guy too, and so they're like, shook the fairy, like. Try to find like duct tape to put over the zipper. But
right.
My point was though, like my wife was culture shock when we met. I always had sleeveless t-shirts on. I was a carpenter, always smoking a cig. I had a busted tooth my brother knocked out of my mouth years ago. We boxed all the time and I couldn't afford to get a fake tooth. So like here's this hillbilly listening to like, Leonard Skinner. I drove a Ford Bronco with tires on it like that tall that like blew smoke everywhere. And he came from a very proper family that ate dinner at 4:45 every night. And, just very proper family. And it's like, hell yeah, let's do this, So she'll like have something that to her is like puts her off. When she met me, I was living in a hayloft, drinking myself to sleep with a bottle of vodka. No joke.
Oh my God.
So I like
you were a fixer-upper.
Yeah. Well, I felt like I was on my way up, but we go to dinner now, and there's this restaurant we go to that sells margaritas that are like handmade $18 drinks, and I'll sit in there, and the friend of ours that owns it, how you doing? And I say, I'm fantastic. I can afford to buy one of your drinks. And she doesn't get the joke. But like, I'm serious. Like anytime I can afford to pay $18 for a drink, like life's dynamite.
Yeah, I definitely feel like coming from any kind of background whether you grew up, in a poor urban area or a rural area or whatever it is, if there were things that you wanted for and things you struggled for, there's still an opportunity every day to sort of look back and be like, gosh, a lot of the things I have now, I never would have imagined I would have them or have access to them or take them for granted back then.
Yeah, man. So what parting words would you give your viewers that whatever, if you had 2 seconds or 2 minutes, whatever it takes you to impart something that is of value or wisdom, be it to become a YouTube star like you, or a martial artist, or a movie producer, or an exotic dance instructor like I once inspired to be?
I would, honestly, the advice I tend to give now is just to, whatever it is you're setting out to do, to know why you're doing it. Like, be in touch with, like, what do you want out of this? Like, do you want to be famous? Do you want to be rich? Do you want people to be impressed by you? And it can be a combination of things. I definitely love that people watch my work. I want people to watch my work and tell me that they like it.
That's a mature question.
Yeah, and I think it comes from the life experience of like reaching certain goals and realizing like, okay, it's still satisfying to reach a goal, whether it's financial or professional or whatever it is. And then to go an hour later or a day later, once that feeling of reaching the goal wears off, to go, I kind of feel the same. Like I'm happy that I reached that goal, but I think it's important not to think, okay, when I'm, say it's entertainment, when I have 1 million subscribers on YouTube, then life will be easier. Then I'll feel more fulfilled as a person. It's like you got to do your own spiritual work to figure out why you do what you do, who you are, what genuinely makes you happy, who you want in your life that makes you happy, that helps you enjoy life.
Know thyself.
Yeah, exactly. Know why you're doing this stuff so that you stay in touch with the process. Because as much as I love setting goals and it helps me to be competitive and do stuff like that, I can still say I genuinely enjoy what I do, even if, regardless of who's watching or whatever. I love acting. I love writing. I love acting. I love martial arts. I love doing all these things. And so the act of doing it is part of the reward for me.
That makes sense. I know, as you just said that, I just have recently started to develop that the last few years in my life. Something that's like, I want to go do that, and I'll think, why? Well, you're doing it because you think people will respect you more if you do it. I don't really want to do that. And I've caught myself doing that. And or maybe it'll generate more financial income. And if that's the only reason, do I need that income stream? Is it worth the trade of time from my family or other obligations? And it's an interesting thing. 25-year-old me, if you said that, I'd be like, shut up, idiot.
Yep.
You know, I had no idea what you were talking about.
No, those are questions I never used to ask myself. And maybe it's this stage of life or whatever it is, but starting to really ask myself, well, yeah, you want to do that, but why? Why do you want to do that? Like really think about it for a second. You could still go do it, but at least ask yourself, why? Am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for somebody I love? Am I doing this for approval? Like exactly the checklist you go through. Well, if it's financial, do I need it? Do I really need it? Is it worth the time? So just being self-aware, know thyself, like you said. I think that's something it's good to keep in mind as you head for your whatever your goals are.
I dig it. I think that's actually the summation of our CarryTrainer program. We have a whole speech at the end of class about loving yourself. And as a young man, I always thought that was some kind of like weird, nonsense thing that like mom said to their kid. And if you know this, I'm saying it more for the people listening. Like if you truly don't have the ability to love yourself, you wouldn't ask yourself that question that you're posing. Because if you don't care about yourself, you continue to do stupid shit that takes you down the wrong path or to the path that doesn't make you happy. And like, I care about myself enough that I'm going to take the moment to reflect here before I just jump head first into something or let my ego dictate my actions. Like the last time I arm wrestled a student in class and tore my shoulder up. Idea. And you won.
Yeah, it's not like we ever stop making mistakes, but I will say that the openness to introspection grows as I manage to get through this life.
Yeah. I dig it, man. I wasn't sure how this conversation would go. I mean, I figured by watching your stuff that you were a pretty cerebral guy. I enjoyed it. I think the conversation went well. I hope that you enjoyed it as well.
This is great. This is absolutely, I really appreciate you having me on the show. I really enjoy doing this, and I love getting into, it's a great, the filmmaking stuff and the show and the character and stuff is a great starting point, but it's really interesting to meet people and find out, what makes them tick and what their perspectives are. So I love opportunities like this.
Agreed. I appreciate it. If you're ever up Chicago way, look me up. I'll buy you dinner and a fancy margarita.
Awesome. Same for you if you find yourself stuck in Albuquerque for some reason.
I've actually had people ask us to do classes there. I don't know if I could fill one. You're a very sparsely populated state down that way.
It's actually, it's a pretty small population. Even the city of Albuquerque is under 1 million people. So it's a small place. But hey, if you manage to pull a class together, come on out and we'll get you some green chili.
Awesome. Again, people find you at, what's the email address?
Enter the Dojo Show at gmail.com, or if you just Google Master Ken, I get pretty much all the messages that come through any of our social media on Facebook, Instagram, through YouTube. So yeah, if you're messaging anybody anywhere about Master Ken, you're probably messaging me.
What's the most common question that you get? Last question I'm going to ask you.
Most common question. Other than, let's see, honestly, the most common question is whether or not the mustache is real.
I was going to ask you that. I knew it.
Yep. That's the and in my defense, like I said, sometimes it is. There are times when I grow it out and it's easier to shoot, and it's like it, and I will get people will recognize me, but then I'll have to go audition for a movie and I got to shave it off. So it depends on the time of year.
I really appreciate your time, brother. You guys that are listening, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, I appreciate it if you did. That's probably where you're viewing this. And check us out on Instagram. Master Ken also has an Instagram account. Is it you or is it Matt? It's you.
It's Master Ken.
It's Master Ken. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I follow you over there. And you post some short stuff over there as well. So I know some folks like the Instagram versus the YouTube format. So check them out there. You guys be well. Tell somebody you love them. Love yourself. Don't be an asshole. And sleep well tonight. Peace out. Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.